example. And what we need and what I pledge to the community leaders, existing leaders, is, please, represent good leadership, whether it's in the masajids, we're constantly hearing about bickering within, masjid boards and organizations. And, if they can't represent and set a good example and be role models for the rest of the youth, then who do we have to look to? And, we're a Muslim professional organization. We're going to take that element of, the corporate leadership structure and integrate it with the religious leadership structure and try to merge those two so that we can be able to provide a more positive environment within Canada and the US and be able to enhance what we can offer, because we have so many good things to offer and there's so many great qualities about Islam, truth and honesty, integrity. We're no longer talking about the crack the whip leadership, because that's not the leader that anyone wants to follow. And we saw Obama in his leadership. And
we have to go for a break, and it's an interesting topic. Please stand by. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Spirit of Islam. We're talking about leadership, and I'd like to pick on a point that Ozram mentioned earlier about corporate leadership and religious leadership, and I honestly think they have to be one. You can't be one or another, and I think one of our problems with religious leadership is they live in their own world and they don't know what's happening in the real world out there, and our young people go and listen and then they go outside to the world and it's different situation and rules that's not applicable. So to be a true leader you have to mix them both.
Yes,
corporate leadership and religious leadership. But what we have today is I don't think it's working.
Well, I just wanted to add to that actually, since one of our sponsors is actually Ben Uni and Associates, and they've just started up the Achievement Center. So Dr. Muhammed Ben Uni is an amazing person who really talks about developing this idea of a combination of leadership and what it takes to be both. So that's something really interesting, and I think that, just being able to listen to him is a great opportunity to learn that. And they're, establishing an institute in Toronto where people will be able to learn both aspects of leadership.
I think the other thing is that there's a major disconnect between what our religious leaders believe and think and what our young people who were born and raised here think and believe. And those two don't seem to agree with one another. They may listen to one another, but they don't think either one of them is right. So they go and do their own thing, while our leaders in the masajid keep doing their own thing. So I think somehow we need to find a common ground that we bring everybody together on the same page.
Is this conference going to help?
Oh, certainly. But I actually want to also talk about just, political leadership as well. We just came off of Canadian elections as well as the U.S. elections. And Imran and I have been actively involved in some political campaigns with some of the candidates. And what we've seen is a lack of participation from our community. Not everyone has to be that person running for MP or prime ministership, but we need more people actually helping and supporting those who can do the job.
Right. One of the major problem in our community, and generally speaking in Canada, if you looked at the voter turnout in the last election was the lowest in decades, less than 60%. So apathy is a major issue in our communities particularly, and our people need to understand that it's a right. We didn't have people before us.
It's a privilege too.
It's a privilege too. If you go back a few decades, and still today in some countries you don't have this privilege. So when we were given the opportunity, we need to go out and exercise our right.
But the good thing is there are more Muslims involved this time, I think, than previous times. But we still need more.
And you talked about progress. I could tell you from experience, from 2004 and 2006 and 2008, we've gradually increased the number of people participating, not just in the voting process, but also actively going out and campaigning for the candidates.
One important issue regarding this, I'd like to stress, us as Muslims could be liberal, conservative, NDP. It doesn't have to be one party or another. Each one has his own inclinations, and we have to work and be involved with all the parties, which one we believe in, and promote all of them.
I agree. I mean, you have to look at their value set and pick the one that is closest to your personal values, and then get involved with them. But getting involved is important, whether it's liberals, like you said, or conservatives, or the NDP.
And I think that's the first step to leadership. I mean, and if you look at leaders, not every leader is, not unaware of what goes on ground level. So anyone starting up a small business, for example, is not only the president, but they're also the bottle washer and or the dishwasher, and I mean, they have to do everything, right? And that's part of building your empire, and that's leadership too, right? You have to be able to do all tasks.
One of the challenges is, how do we tell people how to select a leader? And I think for us in the community, it's a problem. They want to maybe choose the person who has the limelight on them, rather than realize the leader could be the quiet person who's digesting everything and making the right decisions at the right time. And I like to make that, that thing. I always sit in a group and say, who do you think should be the leader of this group? And some people choose maybe the one who's most talkative or whatever, rather than realizing who's observing, who's making the right decisions, and how do you bring that out?
Well, actually, I wanted to talk to you about that. There's actually one of the speakers that I'm really excited to have on board, and his name is Ashraf Zaghloul, and he's actually the Chief Financial Officer for the CN Tower. Yeah. And he was one of those people who felt like, nobody would want to listen to me in terms of what I've done. He was very humble and very quiet, but still the story is very inspiring, because 20 years ago he was a cashier at the CN Tower, and now 20 years later he's become the Chief Financial Officer. And so being able to listen to his story and know what it meant to and how he got there is something I think it'll be phenomenal. And like you said, like sometimes leadership's not about the one who talks the most or who is always in the limelight. Sometimes it's the person who's the most quiet.
And one who can listen as well, right? Listening is a major part of leadership.
Well, it's listening, but knowing when to talk and when to step in, right? And it's very important. So, what other topics are covered in this conference?
Well, that's actually Farheen's forte, because I managed the international. I made sure that there were different leadership summits. Farheen came back from the conference inspired from our New Jersey conference. So we finally have a Toronto conference, and so we're very lucky in Toronto.
You mentioned you had some takeouts or, things you're expecting.
Takeaways, yeah.
Takeaways.
Absolutely. So we've got, in terms of a takeaway, you had actually mentioned that, how do people actually, what do they do after they finish this conference? Where do they go from here? How do we know they're going to take action? So one of the things we've introduced is something called the chef diagram, which is actually a session that's going to be run by Danish Memon, who's from Unlocking Paradise, and he's actually going to talk to people about creating a leadership map for themselves. So we have this, diagram, which is going to be called the See, Hear, Experience, Feel diagram, where people actually get an opportunity at the end of the day to sit there and think about, well, what have I seen? What have I heard? What have I experienced? What do I feel? And try to start putting together that plan of action for their own individual leadership, which I think will be very, very beneficial for everybody who attends.
Imran also is a speaker at the summit.
Yes.
I happen to be on one of the panels, and I will be trying my very best to get my audience motivated to go out and vote in the next election, or perhaps seek to be a candidate in one of the next elections.
I think the important thing is to get involved, right? And realize that we all count and be part of it.
That's right. And, in terms of some of the speakers, some of these people are actually quite active in the community. One of the ladies, actually, that I'd like to mention is, her name is Michelle Dignino. And what she is she's actually someone who's a social entrepreneur. And she's also been profiled as one of the top 25 under the age of 30 in Canada. So she's one of these individuals who has really, in a small amount of time, gotten the opportunity to do a lot of work and really start to help benefit and take that sort of, that step to making a difference. And so being able to listen to her and know how, you know, she now literally goes around and talks to people about how do you empower yourselves and how do you give people that opportunity to take the next step.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the important things I want to stress about leadership, and I think it's an issue with our community, is people want to make the big difference. And we don't the important thing to realize, each one of us' role is to do a small difference. And then it adds up. But we want big change, big things. It doesn't work, and never works that way.
And I would say that it goes back to, starting with yourself, understanding the responsibility. And I could talk about how I got involved. I had an opportunity to spend about 2.5 weeks in Pakistan during the earthquake time in 2005. And I saw, young children like under the age of 10 taking care of their families.